Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. My name is Laura Labissonere-Miller, and I will be your facilitator today. When joining the meeting, you've automatically been put on mute and you cannot unmute yourself. This helps to ensure that the meeting runs smoothly and without unexpected background interruptions. We will use the question and answer button at the bottom of your screen. If you have called into the meeting, you'll be able to participate by using *9 to raise your hand. If you would like to make a comment or ask a question, please use the question and answer feature at the bottom of the screen, noted by the letters Q and A, and type your question into the box. We will answer these questions later in the presentation. If you would like to listen to the webinar in Korean, Mandarin, or Spanish, please click on the interpretation button at the bottom of your screen and select the language you want to hear, and an interpreter will be here. Here's a look at the agenda for today's meeting. We'll start with a brief presentation to share some information about Edmonds Parks and Recreation and share highlights of what we've heard so far. We will use live polling questions during the presentation to get your feedback, and we will use Q&A for you to share additional information. We will end the meeting with some information about next steps for the project and how you can stay involved. As a reminder, we are conducting this meeting in 3 languages in addition to English, so I will occasionally pause to give time for the interpreters to translate as we go. This is also a note that today's meeting will be recorded for documentation. It is not intended for broadcasting. I see we have a question about the number of participants. We have 33 participants so far. I'd now like to introduce Angie. Angie is the Director of Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Services for the City of Edmonds, who I know is very excited for this meeting and to hear everyone's input.
Thank you, Laura. Hello and welcome to everyone. I'm Angie Fester, and on behalf of the city, we are thankful for your interest and that you are able to join us today. I'm happy to introduce the project consultant, Steve Du, who will be helping with today's presentation. Steve?
Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for joining us today. Some of you might have been following this project, but it might be new to some of you. As a reminder, the PROS plan, or Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Plan, is a 6-year guide to help the city manage and improve its parks, recreation programs, and other outdoor experiences. The plan looks to the future and will establish goals, identify specific projects, and ideas on how to implement projects for the next 6 to 10 years. Can you go back one, Laura? There we go, thanks. To the new PROS plan will guide the city's investments in the parks and recreation system. The plan is built from significant community involvement, including outreach and translation to the city's Chinese, Korean, and Spanish communities. As part of the project, we visited all of the parks and looked for opportunities for improvements. This will help create a list of projects for the new plan. One major reason for doing the new PROS plan is because it'll help the city stay eligible for state-based grants and potentially help secure grants to help pay for some of the improvements noted in the new plan. We've had tremendous feedback from the community throughout the process. We've collected 2,000 responses from a community survey, the first online public meeting in May, and other outreach. Nearly everyone, 99%, feel that parks and recreation is essential or important to the quality of life in Edmonds. And people visit local parks often, with 81% saying they visit at least a couple of times per month. The top reasons people visit Edmonds parks is for the beach or waterfront, for walking and running, and for relaxation. Visiting for fitness, playgrounds, community events are also popular activities. Top amenities include trails, fitness and exercise facilities, gardens, and playgrounds. Interest in trails for walking and running is also consistent with regional, state, and national data that tracks recreation trends. Based on what we've heard from the community so far, top priorities for improvements include connecting trails and filling the gaps in the trail system, and finding ways to connect parks, and for safe east-west connections in the city. Upgrading existing parks and exploring how to buy more land to conserve open space and tree canopy. There's also a strong interest in an aquatic center and user conveniences like restrooms at the parks. For recreation programs, there is strong interest in additional events like movies and concerts, as well as outdoor programs like environmental education and youth programs like summer camps and sport programs. Now, before we take a closer look at some of these focus areas, I'd like to ask Laura to lead us in a practice on Zoom's polling tool.
Thanks, Steve. Yes, we have several polls lined up for today, so we'd like to start with a quick practice. So you'll have the same choices in all 4 languages, and Scott will start that poll now, and you'll see a pop-up window. Apologies to our attendees joining by phone. We are unable to provide the poll on the phone, but please let us know your thoughts during the question and answer sessions. Looks like we have a lot of music lovers at today's meeting.
So now that we've practiced, we'll do many more polls going forward. But one focus area is about the distribution of existing parks in Edmonds city limits and who lives in close proximity to a park. We heard a lot of interest in the need for the city to focus more investments in the south and southeast Edmonds. Mapping helps us illustrate how well served people are today. The map on the screen shows an analysis of a 10-minute walk, which is about a half mile to develop or improve parks in the city. Areas in pink show those areas that are within a 10-minute walk to a developed city park. The darker pink is a 5-minute walk, and the lighter pink, a 10-minute walk. Open spaces and county parks are not part of this map, but they are on the next slide. Areas in white show those parts of Edmonds where people have to walk more than 10 minutes to get to a park. On this map, we added those city open spaces with some improvements like trails and nearby county parks. Within the 10-minute walk area, these are shown in purple. So white areas still exist in the south and southeast and north parts of Edmonds. We want your help in thinking about future investments. So we're going to do another poll.
So over the next 6 to 10 years, in what part of Edmonds should the city prioritize additional park and open space investments? Please select up to 3. And just a note again that the polls are just one way to provide some quick feedback during today's meeting, but we certainly want to hear your additional thoughts during Q&A.
And I'd also like to remind the audience that if the poll box is in front of your answers on the screen, you can click and drag the poll box off to the side so you can see the full screen.
Thank you, Angie. So get a quick look at our responses there with many people selecting Highway 99 corridor as well as Southeast Edmonds, followed by North Edmonds and Southwest Edmonds. We go right into another poll question here. If you had to pick just one improvement to Edmonds Park system, which of the following would you choose? Playgrounds, upgrades and replacement, improved permanent restrooms, picnic shelters and tables for gatherings, shade structures for playgrounds, bike skill area or pump track, and additional community gardens. Just taking a look at the Q&A that have come in, we can scan that map graphic here so you can take another quick look at that before we move on. There's a lot of content and we're moving fairly quickly today. So you have some interest in additional community gardens as well as improved maintenance, improved permanent restrooms, playgrounds and picnic shelters, and then bike skill areas as well. So we'll just glance at that map one more time so you have that fresh and we can come back to it again during Q&A. And here we are. So what are your ideas? Use the Q&A feature to share other thoughts on improving existing parks. Let's see, we have at least, we have one comment here about the need for new skate parks in the area, noting that both Lindale and Edmonds are very out of date. And thank you, Laura, for your comment about increasing natural habitat. In addition to the other options, noting that tree habitat, tree canopy, and nature and the ability to interact with nature are very important. I don't know, Angie, if you'd like to respond to Laura's comment in particular.
Yes, so the objective of the question was tailored to improvements and what the priorities might be in the community for improvements. We have other questions and information where we explore the need for additional open space and conservation of that space too. So Laura, your comment is noted. So thanks for submitting that as well. We appreciate that. And I would also like to respond to the question around the skate parks. The Civic Park project is installing a new skate park. So I'm not sure if the individual who asked the question was aware of that, but in response to his comment, the skate park at the Civic Park is relatively simple as well. So the comment is noted for advanced skills skate parks. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Angie. It's great to see so many comments in here. Interest in expanding the pool operations and trees, especially with benches, escape those hot temperatures. And then there are a couple of questions here, Angie, about the status of unlocal property purchase, noting that land is at a premium within the city.
Correct. So Barbara's question relates to the Unical property, which is also known as the Chevron property down by the marsh. And that's that privately held 20 plus acres adjacent to the Edmonds marsh. The city this year did secure the first right of refusal for acquisition on the property if and when, and it is a consideration of the city to look at acquiring that property in some shape or form. There are always options for other state agencies to have it and lease it to the city. There are a number of options that the city is exploring with the state around that property.
Thank you, Angie. Also have notes about the underwater dive park, as well as mountain biking, better trail maintenance, increasing accessibility and stewardship of current trails to help reduce off-trail traffic, increasing accessibility to current parks, just a note about Southwest County Park is also serving Edmonds residents. And then a comment here from Marty at the end about irrigation, so maintenance of existing parks. More benches. As well as restroom facilities. More feedback around the maintaining, creating and maintaining the dive park. Mountain bike, interest in mountain bike facilities. We can probably move on unless there are any particular questions or comments that you would like to respond to, Angie.
Okay, moving on. There's also been strong interest in additional community events. Maybe this is in part due to COVID and the fact that people haven't been able to get out much, or maybe it's because people in Edmonds really like having events to go to. The city currently offers a range of different community events. This includes really large events that bring people to Edmonds from around the region, such as Taste Edmonds and the Art Festival. The city also does medium-sized events like outdoor movies and smaller neighborhood events like concerts in local parks. Putting on additional events does require additional time from program staff and additional maintenance. And it may also mean the city needs to find more partners to help sponsor events to help with the cost. So we're interested in learning more about the types of events you'd like to see. And we're going to do another poll.
Thanks, Steve. We heard interest in additional community events. What types of events should the city focus on? More big events, such as Edmonds Park, Edmonds Art Festival, Taste Edmonds farmers markets, medium-sized events such as outdoor movies, more small neighborhood-focused events such as concerts in local and neighborhood parks, or don't change anything, keep the existing range and variety of events. Please also feel free to use Q&A to offer other ideas. All right, so it looks like we have quite a bit of interest in events, specifically more small neighborhood events. There's also 25% of the poll just saying to not change anything, that you're happy with events. So we'll look at the Q&A as well. I see some questions coming in. Interest in cultural celebrations near the international districts. Concern about noise from Taste Edmonds. Events outside of the bowl. And just a comment about other organizations hosting and managing those large events, or having partners like Chamber and ECA private companies. More environmental awareness. Inclusion of Indigenous populations. See if I missed any others here. Okay, we'll keep going.
Okay, thank you, Laura. So another focus area is aquatics and the need for pool replacement. We recognize that Yost Pool is well loved and heavily used, but Yost Pool is 50 years old now, and it's on the far end of its functional life. In 2009, which was 12 years ago, an aquatic feasibility study explored a variety of options and recommended the replacement of Yost Pool. There's been strong community support for having a pool and aquatic programs, and a replacement of the pool raises a few issues to consider. Should the pool be a small local pool or a large regional sized pool for lap swimming, aquatic play, like having slides in a lazy river? Should it be indoor or outdoor? Each option has different impacts to construction cost and ongoing maintenance and staffing costs. For example, a local scale outdoor pool, like Yost is today, is seasonal and typically limited to use in the summer months. Even as a limited operation, staff training, maintenance, and seasonal weatherization are costs to plan for. For example, replacing Yost pool for something similar is probably around $4 to $6 million. An indoor local scale pool can offer year-round aquatics, but its size might not accommodate all of the different users and activities that might have interest in it. An indoor local pool might cost around $15 to $20 million. Pools, whether small local pools or larger pools that attract people from other areas, do not pay for themselves. But one benefit of a regional sized pool with amenities like a lazy river, splash pad, or hot tubs is that visitors from other communities help with some of the operating costs through admission or class fees. Even a large outdoor pool is still seasonal and not open year-round. An outdoor local pool might cost around $10 to $12 million. I mean, outdoor regional pool, sorry. Then we have an indoor regional aquatic center, kind of like Linwood's. It offers year-round usage, draws people from other communities. An indoor regional pool might cost upwards of $30 to $40 million. So we're interested to learn more about your preferences for pool replacement. I'll turn it back to Laura for another poll.
Thanks, Steve. One more poll question here. If the city were to replace Yost Pool with a new aquatics facility, what should be the focus for a new facility? Local scale pool, outdoor only, a local scale pool, indoor, regional scale, outdoor, or regional scale, indoor? Okay, so it looks pretty evenly split between local scale, outdoor, and indoor, as well as some interest for a regional scale outdoor. We'll move on to trails.
Thanks, Laura. As I noted earlier, walking, running, and biking are top activities. And having access to more or expanded trails is a high priority. Trails come in different forms. They could be within parks or open spaces. They could link destinations like Highway 99 to the waterfront, or it could be part of the road system of bike lanes and sidewalks. Go to the next slide, Laura. Right now, the city is planning for bike lane improvements along some major roads throughout the city, which is great. And providing safe routes with signs and maps is also important. for trail planning. So we've got another poll about how to plan for trails.
Right. What do you see as the most important options for improving trails in Edmonds? Please select all that apply. Improving signage and trails information to increase awareness of opportunities. Improve maintenance of existing trails. Build new connecting trails in existing parks and open space. Acquire and build new trail corridors through the purchase of land or easements. Use street right-of-way and sidewalks to improve connectivity, or all of the above. All right, so we have our responses there, and just narrowly ahead is building new connecting trails in existing parks and open space, but really seeing a lot of interest here in many of the options, including all of the above. So what other ideas do you have to improve trail connections across Edmonds? Please use the Q&A feature to type in your questions. And as a reminder, if you are joining us by phone, please press *9 to raise your hand and then *6 to unmute yourself. And while we are waiting here for questions about trails, we have a lot of feedback about the pool. So just want to acknowledge all of that that's coming in. A lot of interest in the pools and a variety of different opinions on the type and scale of pool. It looks like we do have someone with their hand raised, so we'll go ahead and unmute you if you'd like to speak up.
Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. I was unable to see most of the well, I clearly was unable to see the presentation. Well, I think for trails, the inner urban trail is really not connected through Edmonds down from the intersection with 104. I think that should be a very high priority to complete so that it is connected to the inner urban trail, both north and south of the city, and improve safety. I think that should be a big importance. I think that while 10 minutes to walk is an important factor, I think the quality of resource that you're walking to should also be a consideration when you're looking at level of service analysis. I don't think that it's right to consider a 0.5 acre with no athletic field park to in any way be equivalent to some of the major park developments that are in the bowl, as well as the reality that in the bowl you could walk to multiple parks within 10 minutes. So I really hope that that's also a consideration within the level of service analysis that wasn't quite, from what I heard, drawn out in the presentation. With regard to a pool, money's not infinite, and I think the investment should go where the level of service dictates. and I just don't think that that's going to be Yoast. So I think that the city should really focus on where the people who are fundamentally being underserved before we do major improvements to existing facilities. With regard to events, all of those are held in a bulk, so they really aren't applicable. I think people in the community, the SR99 community, would really love more events. I think the Uptown Market was a great success, and I would love to see the Uptown Market expanded to be the entire summer and to feature more food vendors, not ready-made food vendors, but fruit and vegetable vendors, which I thought was very much missing from the Uptown Market. Thank you.
Thank you. We're glad you were able to share all of that feedback. I know that was a lot. So Angie, just pausing to see if there are any particular responses. Wanted to note that in the Q&A, there's many other people who are also voicing interest in connections to the interurban trail. So you are not alone in your support for that. We have a lot of feedback in here about trails. Safety is a common theme that seems to be coming up in many of the Q&A. So safety is a priority for trail facilities. Also trails accessibility and inclusion. Related to safety, having better lighting. Also seen a few comments about partnering with other jurisdictions. This is related to both pools, but also trail facilities. So looking into those opportunities. And I think with that, we really just want to keep this conversation going. So really no idea is too big or too small. What other kinds of activities would you like to see more of? What types of improvements are important to you? Where do you think the city should focus its efforts? Is there an area of the city that needs more parks and recreation services? Just a reminder that we are using the Q&A function unless you're joining by phone. It looks like we do have one person with their hand raised by phone. If we'll go ahead and unmute you. Digits ending 204.
Hi. Hi, I live in Edmonds. I just want to comment something that for safety. I live close by Joe's Bar, and I love to walk. I work from home, sometimes in person, and I take breaks from my work and I go for my walk. But so I think it was last week, I think I went to like 2 o'clock and walking around to the Joe's Park. It was no cars around, and I feel a little scary because I was just me in the park. And then it was a car. So I walked very fast because I just want to go. No one was there, and I didn't bring, because I would just take a break. I don't have my spray. I left in my home, and for a moment it was a little scary. I know Edmonds is kind of safe, but I still, do you guys thinking about what I don't know, maybe a phone or cameras or something in the park for, especially for women. And 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 the car stopped in the parking, and they didn't chase me, nothing, but it's just the feeling that scary. And I'm sure people who walk alone, they probably feel the same thing, especially women. I just want to share this.
Thank you, Jeanette. Go ahead and see Angie is unmuted if she'd like to respond there.
Laura, if you could kind of repeat her question. My connection is really spotty today, and I only heard part of her comments. So if you could paraphrase her question, I'd really appreciate that.
Absolutely. So her question is all about feeling of safety within the park, particularly in the evening hours and in and around parking lots.
And once again, you broke up for the last part of the question, but my understanding is the sense of safety and security in Yost Park in evening hours. Our parks, as Yost is noted, is not lighted. We don't have lighting necessarily in the park. And typically our park hours are from 7 a.m., 8 a.m. to dusk, and technically close at dusk in the evenings when it does get darker. I apologize if her uncomfortable for her. We don't want that in any of our parks or for any of our participants to have those experiences in our parks. If there were specific improvements that would make her feel more comfortable, I would be happy to have that conversation with her to better understand exactly in what way she was uncomfortable. There are improvements to the park that we could implement to help her feel more safe in there. We would be willing to do that. So I saw her name on the participants list, and maybe we can get in connection after this meeting and talk about that, thoughts on that.
Thank you, Angie. And I just want to note that this is certainly a theme that I'm seeing in some of the other questions of safety. So that is certainly something that this plan will be addressing and incorporating. We still have the caller with the digits ending 204 raising a hand. If you would like to chime in, please feel free to do so now. Okay. We will move on. It looks like they are back on mute now, but we have a lot of questions and comments. And if you do decide to speak up, just go ahead and do so. So interest in, again, in youth activities, skateboarding. We have a question about just the breakdown of the people in the room. So our project team, you met most of us from the project team in the city of Edmonds. We also have just a couple of folks, Scott Burns and Lizzie Bouchel, who are supporting with technical logistics. And then we have our 3 interpreters, Ingwen, Miss Song, and Daniel. And everyone else, I believe, on the call is from the community, unless Angie, you're aware of any other city staff joining us today.
Right. So yeah, I'll respond to that. Our highest number, I believe we had 50 participants in the entire event. So 50 participants, the entire event. 11 of those are staff, consultant, and the people who are producing the meeting. So the remainder of that are members of the public. And I believe we have 2 elected officials in attendance, as far as I can tell from the list.
Thank you, Angie. We're seeing additional support for parks within the south part of Edmonds. And particularly, we mentioned looking for partnering opportunities with other jurisdictions. But this particular comment from Judy is looking at other opportunities to partner with the Lutheran Church, community organizations. So that's another opportunity. Also seeing more support for the Uptown Market. I know our team, Angie, was out there this summer and definitely looking to see that continue to grow. Seen a couple of comments and questions around Meadowdale Park, including the signage, but also just overall maintenance within that particular park. So that is something we are noting. I'm not sure if there's anything in particular Angie or the city has.
Right, we are aware of neighbors' concerns of Meadowdale Park and safety and security and after hours activities in the park. So after the park is technically closed, that there are still people in the park, and we are aware of that. We've been in communication with our police department to request for additional sweeps and drive-throughs of the park. There's always the question of installing and using a gate on the park that does require personnel to unlock in the morning and to lock at night. And currently we really don't have the park's maintenance staff that work in the evenings that would be available to lock the gate. So that's a little bit of a worth talking about with the neighbors and their concerns about that park. I did see one comment on here from Lori Sorensen about, and Steve made, she said, when Steve first started speaking, I thought I heard him say free camping. I'm not quite sure what that's in reference to, but we don't have camping or campsites in any of our parks. So I'm not sure, Steve, what that would have been in reference to, but we don't provide camping in our parks. So that isn't an option.
If I can clarify, I believe that section of the presentation was referring to youth sport camps or summer camps, not camping. So it was more geared toward program options than it was toward camping outside.
Thank you for clarifying that. We also have a comment here just about use of unopened streets right of way. And an additional comment, Judy, I see you commented a couple of times that you're not able to see responses. We are clearing those out as we're answering, just to make sure that we're seeing all of the questions that are coming in. So you have a comment here about access to trails. Knowing where they are is important. And yes, that is definitely something that we're looking into.
Laura, I'd like to address one of the questions too from Peggy about, are there any plans around community gardens? And this may be from the wonderful donation that recently occurred from Shirley Johnson property on Bowden Way adjacent to Yost Park. And there has been some conversations in the past about this site being used as a community garden. And that's maybe where this question is coming from. That park will need to go through a master planning process with the community engaged. That usually takes a year or so to complete that process. And if the community garden is one of the I think that would be something that would definitely be considered and the site would be good for that. Right now, I'm just letting the translators catch up a little bit too. In addition, we are seeing in the pros plan responses some priority for community gardens. And so that would require additional research into finding locations for those. If that holds true in the pros plan, we'll be doing additional work around potential locations for those gardens.
Thank you, Angie. Could you or Steve also speak to if the Parks Department is considering climate impacts in planning?
I'll start on that. Yes, and in several ways. One is simple as plant material and design in our parks, that we are shifting to plant material that requires water and maintenance and fertilizer and additives, and being aware of even the species of plant that we choose can make a big difference. And we are being very conscientious about future design of our parks and how to respond to hotter temperatures, less water, and how to conserve those resources as well. In addition, parks do provide benefits to help with climate change as well. As we know, tree canopy provides shade, you know, ecological benefits for water and air, and that's very important as well.
Thank you, Angie. We have another question here about if permitting will be different for events that will be allowed at the Civic Park once that is complete. I don't know if we have a sense of that yet.
I'll probably let Shannon Burley chime in on that if she wants to unmute herself. Shannon?
Yes, Civic Park, and hello everybody. Thanks for being here today. Civic Park was actually designed in conjunction with several of our large festival producers. So things like the fireworks show and Taste, the park has actually been designed to accommodate those larger festivals, and our expectation is that they would return to Civic Park.
Thank you, Shannon. We also have a clarifying question, just to follow up to the climate change issue, which has come up a number of times within the Q&A here. So I do want to hit on this one, which is just clarifying if the increase in tree canopy is both within parks and open space.
So Gail, to answer your question, we don't necessarily have a plan that is specific to X amount of trees per park and increasing tree canopy. However, we do utilize our parks as opportunities for a lot of tree planting and vegetation planting. And it's a wonderful area to do that. So a considerable amount of tree planting every year within the Parks Department, between volunteer projects and revegetation and restoration of our park sites. So there is quite a bit of tree canopy that is being planted and brought back into our parks.
Thank you, Angie. I just want to note the time here. We have about 4 minutes, so we'll keep going through some of these questions and comments. Also, just want to note that we will take in all of this feedback into consideration. So this will be included within the parks plan. It's incredibly helpful to hear all of your feedback I know that Angie and her team are also happy to answer questions offline. We can respond by email if we don't get to everyone today. We had a note here about frustration around Zoom, and I share that frustration. We have done some limited in-person community engagement for this plan by attending the night market, and we'll certainly be looking for opportunities in the future as it is safe to do so. See some comments in here about partnerships with community organizations. That is something that we have started to do and are really looking for more opportunities to partner with community-based organizations. We have a question here about permitted use of existing trails and clarifying that many wooded trails are used by mountain and motorized bikes and concern about safety for other users. And this particular person is asking about signage to enforce these rules. Angie, I'm not sure if you wanted to, if you were able to respond to that one.
Yeah, sorry. So currently the city code does not disallow the use of bikes in the parks. So we are unable to post signs and post rules about that usage that doesn't exist. So in order for us to change that, the city code would have to be changed, and then we can move forward with signing differently. In the city code, it does not state that bikes are not, the code does not state that bikes are not allowed in parks.
So we do want to encourage questions and comments to continue after this meeting. Please do share this information. We will copy and paste the email address within the chat so that you have access to share all of your feedback and to share that with others in your community who would also like to provide feedback. So what's next? You can visit the city website to learn more. We will continue to have discussions with Parks and Planning Board and the City Council. We plan to have the draft plan ready by year end, and we'll review and adopt that plan by the City Council is expected early 2022. Please visit our website to share additional comments. And thank you everyone for joining us today.
I'd also just like to take a quick moment to respond to comments around the Zoom meetings. Our current policy does not allow us to have in-person meetings. Meetings, currently the policy is that meetings of 2 or more people have to be virtual. And so we would obviously much prefer to do this in person, but we are unable to do so. And we do have a timeline associated with this PROS plan project, and that we need to complete this and have it adopted by the end of February to be eligible for state funding for the next 3 years. So we would much prefer to be in person, but we really appreciate your patience and understanding and attending in our Zoom meetings and contributing through your comments. You're always available to email directly with the PROS plan at edmondswa.gov address there, and the Parks Department. We're always available for comments for a phone call or conversation or an email. So happy to hear more feedback that way as well. And I would just like to again thank you each for attending today, taking some time in the middle of your Saturday to join us. Much, much appreciated.
Thank you, everyone.